Hi, I'm Zach Reiser, and this is the first installment of some effects pedal tricks and tips. So in these videos, I'm going to be getting into some common topics that I see on forums all the time, questions that I get asked quite frequently, and also just some of my personal favorite things to do with my effects. So in this video, I am going to be talking about one of the most important effects that a bass player can have in their arsenal, and it is the octaver. Now, many people don't realize there are two main categories of octavers. There are analog octavers and there are digital octavers, and they are very, very different beasts. And I see a lot of people get frustrated or upset when the octaver that they purchased did not have the sound that they had in their head. So I'm going to be showing off three different octavers in this video. My Boss OC-2, which is an analog octaver, and then two digital octavers, the Electro Harmonix Hog 2 and the Eventide H9, which are very complex digital harmonizers. And to be completely honest, they're not my favorite digital octavers, but they sound great and they'll work for this video. Here is my bass's dry tone, Dingwall ABZ 6-string on the neck pickup. So let's start with my personal favorite octave pedal, which is the old school classic of the Boss OC-2. This is one of those funny pedals you'll see on tons of people's boards, from pros to amateurs. They don't make them anymore. They're a little bit hard to find, but it's just got something special. It's just fatness embodied in a pedal. It's just too funky. Moving on to the digital side of things, let's start with the Electro Harmonix Hog 2. And then for another digital flavor, here is the Eventide H9. So I hope that you noticed immediately off the bat that with both of the digital octavers, it really sounds like two different bass players playing. It sounds like me and then myself an octave lower at the same time. Whereas when you have the OC-2 on, it just sounds like there's this fat analog, almost sine wave signal underneath your bass tone. So let me give a quick back and forth again on those two. Here's the OC-2. And then here is the Eventide H9. Let's combine our octavers with a commonly combined effect, which is a compressor. So I'm going to pull out a pick, and this is actually the sound I was using at the beginning of the video. So here is the OC-2 into my Cali 76 compact bass. Sounds like this. Similar effect here, but with the H9 running into the Cali. Here's the Hog 2 running into the Cali. Sorry, here we go. Sounds funky, it just doesn't have this fatness. All right, another big difference, polyphonic tracking. So if I play anything that is not exactly monophonic into the OC-2, it's going to freak out. So here's a simple power chord. And hopefully you can hear the octave signal is bouncing all around in the background. And to really hear that, I'm going to turn off my dry signal. So here's just the octave signal. You can kind of hear it doesn't know what to do. Now for comparison, here is the Hog 2 with just the dry signal. Just sounds like a power chord an octave lower. No bouncing around here. Same thing with the H9. Here's the OC-2 with a simple major triad. It's going to freak out. Just sounds like a garbled mess. Here is the Hog-2. Sounds like a nice warm triad to me. And that's the H9. Now, out of the three pedals that I'm showing, the H9 does the best job of actually sounding like my bass drop tuned. So if you are a guitar player and you're trying to make your guitar sound like a bass, then you need something that's like the H9 or the Digitech Drop or the Digitech Whammy or a couple of the other, like the Pog-2, for instance, something that gives you that transient if you really want it to sound like an instrument pitched down. Here's a little bit more of that H9 with a pick. And then here's the same thing with the OC-2. Doesn't sound like a bass or guitar at all. One more quick note about tracking. I hear pretty often that analog octavers don't track well. And there are a couple cases where the actual pedal is not designed well, but in general, in my experience, bad tracking comes from not clean technique, specifically in regards to muting. If you want an analog or any monophonic analog octaver, any monophonic pedal to track well, you need to make sure you're giving it one pitch at a time. So all of your strings need to be quiet, and whenever you've played a note, when you go to the next note, that note you just played needs to be done ringing. If you keep your strings quiet and you play one note at a time, these analog octavers, especially the Boss OC-2, track incredibly well. Hopefully by now you have a good idea of the main differences between digital and analog octavers in regards to the way that they sound with your dry signal, kind of that classic octaver effect. And this is honestly the way that probably 90% of people are going to use their octavers. But what I want to talk about now is specifically using the pure wet or octave signal by itself, because this is actually how I use my octavers most of the time. So what we're going to get into now is specifically using an octaver to create a synth bass texture. And I got introduced to this idea from an amazing bass player named John Davis, and he treats his pedal board much more like a modular synth than he would a traditional effects pedal board. So he used an OC-2 specifically for this pure wet sound. Yet again, here is my bass's dry tone. And here's the same thing with only the octave signal on the OC-2. And all of a sudden, your bass is not a bass anymore, it's a synth. This is another common complaint, though, I get from people asking about octavers, is they buy a digital octaver expecting it to make that sound, and that is never going to happen. So let me show you what a pure wet signal sounds like on the digital octavers now. So this is the Eventide H9 pure wet. And then here is the Hog-2 pure wet. Yet again, you're getting that string ring, you're getting the fretboard rattle, you're getting the transient of the note. It just sounds like a bass, which is awesome if that's what you're going for. Yet again, if you're trying to pitch your signal down to make it sound like a bass or sound lower, that's awesome. But if you want this fat synth tone, you gotta go analog. In regards to this pure wet synth signal here, it is even more important when you're putting on some kind of dirt. So when you put dirt on after this super fat sine wave synth sound, it sounds even synthier. So here is a little bit of the pure wet Boss OC-2 into a gated fuzz on my Source Audio Aftershock. quick comparison, here is the Eventide H9, only the octave signal running into the same distortion. And what it's going to sound like is it's going to sound like a bass running into that distortion, rather than that fat saw or sine wave synth sound. You can hear I get fret noise, I get my fingers on the strings, all that kind of stuff is coming through the distortion as if it was just a bass. Even more apparent with a pick. So here is a pick with the OC-2 into that distortion. And now here is the H9 with a pick into the distortion. It basically sounds as if it sounds like I was playing the same line an octave lower with my dry bass, which is what this sounds like. I hope that this overview has given you a bit of information that maybe you didn't know, maybe you did know it, but if nothing else, it will maybe save you some trouble down the road. So, yet again, to sum everything up, if you want the fat, sine wave, synthy sounding octavers, you need to go analog, especially if you're planning on using it pure wet with only the bass signal coming through, the sub-octave coming through. So that would be pedals like the Boss OC-2, the MXR Bass Octave Deluxe, the 3-leaf audio octave pedal, and the Aguilar Optimizer, for instance. However, on the flip side, if you want polyphonic tracking, if you want it to sound like your guitar or your bass pitched down an octave so that you're trying to use it to drop tune or something, then you need to go digital. That would be things like the Electro Harmonix Hog 2 or the Pitchfork, the Digitech Whammy or Drop, or the Eventide H9 or Pitch Factor. I hope you found this effect pedal tips and tricks video helpful. I will be back with many more of these. These are very fun for me to do. I love talking about gear, and I love helping people solve problems or showing them something cool. So if there is anything you have a question about that you think I might be able to answer, please comment below and I will try to make a future video out of it. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe below. It really helps me out, and I'll see you guys soon.